So Amir and I wanted to talk with you guys about mental health, mental illness, and how it affects us, and also some of our favorite celebrities and maybe some of your favorite celebrities as well. So just to start off the conversation with a couple statistics, just so you know how prevalent mental illness is, no one's alone here. About 1 in 5 adults are affected by mental illness in the United States every year, according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness. That's 43.8 million people, and 1 in 25 have a mental illness that interferes with an activity in their daily life, which is about 9.8 million people. And there are a whole bunch of celebrities that have come out just talking about the benefits of going and getting help. There's no shame in admitting that you have a problem, that you're struggling with one. There was a particular quote from Beyonce regarding to mental health that I wanted to share. She says, "I couldn't even tell which day or which city I was at. I would sit there at ceremonies and they would give me an award, and I was just thinking about the next performance. My mother was very persistent. She kept saying that I had to take care of my mental health." And it's really good that she was able to talk about it with her mom, because I know in my particular situation, my mom was like the last person I wanted to tell. Obviously, Selena Gomez has come out as well. My girl, I had to bring her up. So she says, "I've discovered that anxiety, panic attacks, and depression can be side effects of lupus, which can present their own challenges." And another thing that I think we should talk about is anxiety, because I recently had an anxiety attack over the weekend. And Zayn Malik has talked about his issues with anxiety before. He said, "Anxiety is nothing to be ashamed of. It affects millions of people every day. When I was in One Direction, my anxiety issues were huge, but within the safety net of the band, they were at least manageable." And then he was talking about, as a solo performer, sometimes you feel like extra exposed. Right. Kerry Washington, Wentworth Miller, there's so many celebrities that have come out and talked about their own struggles, and there's just absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Cara Delevingne is another one. Cara Delevingne went on sort of a Twitter, I guess Twitter thread, Twitter discussion with herself. So she says about fashion, "I do not blame the fashion industry for anything. I suffer from depression and I was a model during a particularly rough patch of self-hatred. I'm focusing on filming and trying to learn how not to pick apart my every flaw. I'm really good at that." And I think that's something that we see a lot, is that when you are struggling with your mental health, you are your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And everything that maybe you think other people are saying to you, you'll spin it in your own unique, twisted way, and it'll become truer than it is, even though it's probably not based in reality at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of these artists and musicians, in general, they're introverted people, and they're really good at their craft, whether it's singing or acting. But outside of that, everything that comes with it, the fame, that's so much for an introverted person who wants to just focus on themselves and like their own work.
And also, when you are a creative person or a performer, you can twist it however you want, but you are performing looking for validation from others. Now, whether or not it's an audience member or just a family member, or you want validation from, sometimes it's yourself, but for me, I've always found you crave that sort of external validation, so it can be harder to focus internally on things that aren't really clicking for you. And so when you put this gift out into the world, whether it's an acting performance or singing or modeling or whatever, design, and if the feedback is negative, you will take that in your head and you'll internalize it as like, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't have tried this at all. You have a lot of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And so I think it's really good when people that are at the top of their field come out and speak about things that they go through. Because mental illness doesn't discriminate. They don't care if you're successful. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of friends, or if you look the way that you want to look, or you don't look the way you want to look. It reaches everyone in its own way, shape, and form.
Right, and it's really good that they came out and talked about it. I think the next step would be, what do you do if you are suffering from mental illness or problems? And that's like a really complicated thing to talk about, to even tackle. It takes a lot of time and a lot of help to fix it, and oftentimes it never even goes away. You're gonna have to live with it for the rest of your life, but you learn to manage it.
You figure out skills.
Yeah.
So I've talked about this before. I definitely went through a time in my life where I was very depressed, the lowest I've ever been. And during that time, I got paired with also therapy. It doesn't work the first time necessarily. No. I've been through like a life coach and a number of different therapists, and the life coach, this is such a weird. It's so weird to like look back on this because it feels like it happened to a different person. But the life coach gave me certain skills that I still use to this day when I find myself sort of spiraling out or freaking out about something. So I'm so grateful that I had the wherewithal, and it was one of the most difficult things I ever had to do was to tell a friend of mine, Darren, I mean, she's been on Murder with Friends, I had to tell my friend Darren, I was like, I am not doing okay, and I think I'm acting like I might be, and she was like, no, everyone knows. Everyone was like, no, we know, you haven't left your room in a week, like we know. But it was just telling her and then knowing that people knew and they could help me out, because when you are in that place, I think it feels like the most overwhelming thing ever to find help. Like, okay, I already feel like I don't have the capacity to do anything, like eat food, leave my bed, watch any movie that is not Beauty and the Briefcase. I watched that movie a lot when I was depressed because it was the only thing I had on VHS. So I know it's a fun fact about me. It's very quotable. In any case, I wasn't in any capacity to look for help, so you need to reach out to a trusted person that can help you.
You can't even get out of bed, let alone reach out to someone.
What's your experience been with mental health?
I've been depressed for, I'd say, over 10 years now, since I was 16, and I was on a lot of different medication. I was on Adderall for a long time, and that probably made it worse for me. But it took me almost 10 years before I actually went to a therapist.
Really?
And that was probably the #1 biggest help for me, was just finding someone that you can openly trust and talk to about all of your problems. And it's kind of crazy how much it works. Just saying these things out loud that have been in your head for so long.
What was your hesitation if you already knew that you were struggling with depression and that was something that came up in your life?
Honestly, for a long time, I thought I could just beat it by myself because of the way I was raised, which is like, you gotta be stronger, you gotta deal with it. You're a pussy if you're depressed, if you can't take care of it, if you can't deal with it. That, and I thought I could take substances to make me feel better so I could be normal like everyone else. Like I love smoking weed, for instance, but it doesn't affect me the same way that it affects other people. And oftentimes, like throughout the years, like I look at all of my friends around me, like I wanna smoke weed and have fun, because when I first started smoking, I did have fun when I smoked, but because I was depressed, over time, it does the opposite effect of what it's supposed to do.
You were self-medicating.
Yeah, so now like when I start smoking, I can easily fall back into this kind of pit of despair, and I have to be careful. And the same thing with drinking, the same thing with any sort of substance. And unfortunately for me personally, like those things turn into a negative thing.
So when you hear about, so we got this list from Elite Daily, when you hear about celebrities coming out and talking openly about mental health, does it seem sort of trite to you, or does it resonate when you see a celebrity on this list and you're like, oh, I really identify with their work, this is someone I really respect, it makes me feel less alone?
No, I think it does help a little bit. Look, it's different for everyone, mental illness, like I just explained for myself. Some people, they get weed to help them with their mental illness, to help them with their depression.
I will say weed for me helps me a lot when I have anxiety attacks.
So it's different for everyone, and you can't be like, oh, that person's just faking it. They're dealing with it the way they know how to, and it's their own personal experience.
Yeah, I also think that the more transparency we have across the board, the better. I want to be really open with everyone that, we've been through therapy and finding a different therapist. It can be sort of comical in its tragic way.
Especially with social media, I think a lot of times it makes you feel like everyone around you is so happy and everything's going so well.
Yeah, and it's just so okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
That's like my new philosophy, TBH, for the month, is that you know, I've talked about this before. One of my oldest friends is going through cancer, and I was talking about this with Amir yesterday, and I want to get better when someone asks me how I'm doing at saying, depending on the day, great, or hey, feeling pretty heavy.
And feeling honest and feeling good that you're actually saying that.
Yeah.
So honestly, if you have insurance, go find a therapist to talk to. Most insurances, they cover that. And if you don't, find a friend to talk to, anyone. I think there's some good resources. We'll hopefully include them in the link below.
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching.
Talk, yeah.
We'll see you next time on Pop Trigger.